Hi, Mandy here from Needles, Thread and Little Betty. Little Betty is outside. I think my husband's home at the moment and he's doing bits in the garden, so Little Betty's supervising. Okay, so today we're going to be making bowl covers. Variety of sizes here as demonstration. And these are really useful, especially this time of year in the UK, because it's starting to get a bit warmer, and when it gets warmer you get the pesky little flies, etc., and these just help cover your food and keeping them bug free. So these are reversible, made from fabric, and it saves using all of that horrible cling film or the plastics or anything else that you happen to use and then discard afterwards. If you get bits of food on these, simple, you just wash them and then they're ready to go again. So let's get started. So what we need is 2 pieces of fabric of your choice, and these are just fat quarters that I found in my stash. And let's face it, if you do any sewing, then you've got a stash of fabric. Okay, so there'll be pieces lying around. I'm going to bring the camera down, and what we're going to do, just move these bowls out of the way, is we're going to get our first piece of fabric and we're going to face it wrong side up, and we're going to get a bowl that we're making the cover for and place on the fabric. Just place it down so that we've got the rim of the bowl on the fabric. Okay, so your size of the fabric, I'm using fat quarters, so there's plenty left because this is a smallish bowl, but the size of the fabric, what you need it to do is to be large enough for the rim of the bowl, for the largest part of the bowl, plus an extra 2 inches all the way around. So I've got my bowl on my fabric and I'm just going to take the fabric pen, this is a chalk marker, and I'm just going to draw all the way around the rim of the bowl. Okay, and when I've done that, because I need around 2 inches around the edge, I'm just going to take a tape measure and just mark off 2 inches intermittently around the edge of the bowl. All the way around. And then I'm just going to join these little marks up. Don't have to be perfect, as long as you've got around 2 inches. Just join them up, and that's just to give me a cutting edge. There we are. It's just a bit faded there. Let me just make sure I've got the 2 inches. That's it. You don't really want it any less than this, because what we're going to do is we're going to be making an elastic channel. Okay, So once I've done all of that, I'm then going to cut out the larger circle. From now on, the inner circle that we drew around the bowl, we're just ignoring that. We don't need that anymore. Just turn that round. Nice pair of sharp scissors. All the way around. Let's get into the end. That's it. Move that over. That can go in the scrap stash. And then our second piece of fabric, we want to have this face down, and with our circle, place that on top of the fabric. I'm just moving it over a little bit so there's less wastage. And place that on top, so right sides are together. So you on the circle, you'll have your wrong side up, right sides together. And then I'm just going to pop a few pins in to hold them together. That's enough of those. And then we're going to cut round the second fabric using the top circle as the template. All the way around. Don't worry if it's not perfectly even. You're going to be sewing these together and there will be a seam allowance. Almost there. There's some more for the scrap stash. Okay, so we're going to go over to the sewing machine. I'll lift you up, move you over to the sewing machine. And what we're going to do is we're going to sew all the way around, all the way around the edge of the outer circle edge, but we're going to leave a 2-inch gap in the middle. So it might be an idea just to mark out where you're going to have your gap. It doesn't have to be exactly 2 inches, but what we'll do afterwards is we're going to turn it round to the right side. So you just need a little gap. So start at one of the edges that you've just marked, if you've marked them, or edges of where your gap's going to be. Remember, this is about 1/4 inch. So pop your needle in, and I'm just going to do a couple of stitches and a couple of back stitches, and then I'm going to go off and I'm going to do a 1/4 inch all the way around the edge of the circle. Okay. Turning as you go. Now if you have your fingers loosely on your fabric, it'll help you turn, because it's alright if it's a straight line, it will just sort of go off and sew. But if you're doing shapes, you need to manipulate where your fabric's going to go. So just guide your fingers round into a circle. easier to mark your 1/4 inch circle round, then do that. That's, you know, whatever makes it better for you. Taking your pins out as you go along. Remembering to only sew to the place where you've got a 2-inch gap. You need to leave that 2-inch gap. And when you get to that place, just do a couple of backward stitches and a couple more forward stitches. And there you've got it all the way around, just leaving that gap for turning. Okay, so the next thing I'm going to do is with my pinking shears, I'm just going to trim that seam allowance just to about half of what it is. You need to make sure that you don't snip into the stitches that you've just sewn. So I'm just using my pinking shears. I mean, you won't see the seam allowance, but the pinking shears, one, it helps prevent fraying, and if you prevent fraying, often the pieces last, what you're sewing lasts longer, and it just kind of like, it just sort of neatens it up really, because when we turn this the right way round, we're going to be making an elastic channel, and the seam allowance will be in that elastic channel. So to sort of shorten it and neaten it up just makes that channel freer for threading anything through, and we need to feed the elastic through it. It just makes it easier. Okay, so all the way around. I saw a post a couple of weeks ago on one of the social media forums. Someone was asking about how to sharpen pinking shears, and I've had these probably for around 10 years plus, and all I've ever done when they're starting to feel a bit blunt is I just snip at tin foil. So I mean, it might work for you, it might not, but that's what I do, and I've still got them and they're still working, they're still very sharp and still working well. Just a little tip for you. So I've done that all the way around, and now what we're going to do is where the gap is, we're just going to turn it the right way round, just pushing it through gently, just teasing it out. So we've got it, we've got both the right side of the fabric facing. Okay, nearly there. Bit of a shake, and what I do is I just, I mean, push your finger in as well, just to help push that seam out. Because what tends to happen, especially if you're doing something with a shape to it, is the seams naturally kind of square themselves up. So I just use my finger, push it out, but also between my thumbs and first fingers, I just sort of roll them a little bit, and that just helps bring them out as well. There we go. There we go. Don't worry about these ends. We'll tuck them in afterwards when it comes to closing the gap. So I'm going to now just give that a press and press the seams. Okay, so I'll just and try and get the camera angle straight. So I'm just pressing over. Nice circular movement. If you feel that the seams are sort of moving around, if you need to just give them a bit of a roll, again, just make sure you don't burn yourself. Okay, so I'll move that iron out of the way. I'm finished with that. And I'll bring you back to the front. So the next thing we're going to do is we're going to make the elastic channel. So with my tape measure, from the edge of the circle, I'm just going to measure in about half an inch. In fact, I might, no, it'd be the same. I was just thinking, because this is pink, am I going to see these marks on this? Same as we did the others, just mark, roughly intermittently, mark out half an inch all the way around. And again, because this is chalk marker, these marks will rub off. You don't want to be doing it with something that's not going to come off, because this is the right side of the project. All the way around, just marking off about half an inch. Doesn't matter if it's just over. You don't really want it going under, because what, as I said before, we're making a channel and we want to be able to feed the elastic through, and if you've got a narrow channel, it's just making it harder for yourself. So I'm just going to join those lines up, because again, this will make it easier for me to keep that half inch measurement all the way around. Just pressing on a little bit, because it is hard to see with me having a chalk pen, which is the same colour as what's on my fabric that I've chose. Okay, nearly there, and to the end. So what we're going to do now is we're going to sew again all the way around, but this time we're going to sew all the way around. We're not going to leave any gaps at all. Okay, so over to the sewing machine. Bring my chair forward. So find somewhere you want to start, it doesn't matter, and pop your needle in on the line, the marker line that you've just made. A couple of stitches, a couple of back stitches just to help secure it, and off we go. And that's another reason why it's a good idea to trim the seam allowance when you do it, because if it was too long, there is a possibility you could catch some in these stitches. And with us trimming it down, especially with the pinking shears, there's less likely that's going to happen if you've marked it correctly. Again, using your fingers to turn the fabric as you sew. Nearly there. Again, when you get to the end, a couple of back stitches. And you've got it a circle all the way around, creating your elastic channel. Okay. Just got a couple of little ends I want to snip. Okay, so I'll bring you back down. And so now we need to feed the elastic through. So I've got a piece of elastic here. This is 5mm wide. You don't really want it any smaller than this, because if elastic is too thin, especially if it's over sort of a larger area, there's more chance that it could break or snap. So I've gone for 5mm, which is plenty small enough. You can go slightly bigger because you've got an 1/2 inch gap. So, but this is what I've got. So this is what I chose to use, and just measure it around. So I'm using this bowl roughly around the edge of your bowl. Now this, to make it elasticated and for it to sort of sit, it will be pulled in so it's tighter, but we'll do that when we sew the ends together. So I've put a safety pin on one of the ends of my elastic, and basically just put the safety pin into the gap that you've left and just start threading it through. The safety pin just gives you something to grip hold of, and just helps with feeding the elastic through. What you need to remember is, as you're feeding it through, you pull in the fabric back over it with your other hand. Is just make sure that you don't lose the tail in the end. Keep your eye on that. You can put another safety pin on the end of that as well, which would prevent it if you want to, because obviously if that goes in there, you're going to have to start again. So just feeding this all the way through. And just keep, because it will start to sort of gather up as you're pushing it through, just naturally will. But you just got to keep moving the fabric as you go. If it bunches up too much, it just makes it a little bit more awkward. I mean, eventually you can smooth it out, but it just makes it a bit awkward. Nearly there. I mean, the good thing with these are you know, if you have cling film over something, one, it's bad for the environment, and you know, these are more fun to look at. If you've got a colour theme in your kitchen, you can match it up, or just basically, you know, it's just more colourful and nicer to look at. I mean, it's just about keeping your food nice and fresh. If you're having a barbecue, or you're having a picnic, or something like that, where your food needs to be out for a little while you're prepping. Or, I mean, with the bigger bowls, if you make breads, you leave your dough for so long so it can start to rise, which you need to cover up anyway. So it's really handy for all those kind of things. If you've got a jar that's open, you're popping it in the fridge or something, or anything that you're popping in the fridge, it just helps keep other bits from dropping into it and that. So when you get to the end, when you come out the other end, just pull some of the gathers round a bit. Just helps that. Again, keep your eye on you, because it will shoot off without you knowing. Without you realising. And then you've got your two ends, and we need to join the elastic together. So just go around and just check that your elastic hasn't twisted in any way, because that will have a bit of an impact on the use of the elastic. And get your two ends, and we're going to be sewing one on top of the other, so it's kind of like that. Okay, so I'm just going to move some of that fabric out the way, because that just makes it easier for me to see what I'm doing. And we know this is the size of the bowl, so just pull it in a little bit, because you've got more kind of elasticity on keeping it over your bowl. You can get your bowl and you can just sort of place it on, hold it. Yeah, that's fine. Okay, so you know how much you need in there. So I'm just holding that on top, and what I'm going to do is I'm just going to get a pin, and I'm just pinning those two together for the moment to hold them in place where I want them. And I'm taking the safety pin out. We're done with that now. Okay, so why these two have held together like that, obviously you might have some long ends. We don't want them, so we're just going to trim the ends off. Not too short, because if you've got it too short and you've not got it a lot to sew, it's more likely for the stitches to break open. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to sew those two pieces of elastic together. Now, with elastic, often you do it in a zigzag stitch, but because this is quite narrow, I'm just going to sew up and down and put a few back stitches in just to secure it, because there's not a lot of room to do the zigzag stitch on this. So I'm going over to the sewing machine, bring you up, bring you over to the sewing machine, just pulling back some of the fabric again. Doesn't matter about that at the moment, because you'll level it out in a minute. And this is just a little bit fiddly. I'm just pushing that under my needle where the pin is, just pushing it under the needle, keeping it flat, and I'm just pushing my pin down, my needle rather, so it goes through both the fabrics, and then putting the foot down, and that will just hold it so I can slip this needle out. Okay, and keeping that in place with my finger, I'm just going to do a couple of stitches, a couple of back stitches, and then sew along the two joined lengths. Then I'm going to stop, keep my needle in, lift my foot up, keep my needle in, and I'm just going to turn that round, put my foot back down, make sure that your fabric's out the way, and I'm going to do the same again, just sew along it. Doesn't have to be in the same place, it might have slightly moved, that's fine. Just along, and a couple of back stitches. And that's done, you've got your elastic sewn together. So I'm just going to push that down into the channel, and I'm just going to ease this around so we're evening out all the gathers. We are going to push a bit back again in a second, but it's just to start it off so we're evening the gathers, and just push a bit back, and this gap that we need to close is just fold the fabrics in inside the gap, hold them two together, and I'm going to pop a pin just popping a pin in there just to hold them together, and then you can adjust it. Like there's a little bit there that's popping up, just adjust it so it's neat. Now if I was making these for somebody else, I'd be tempted to hand sew that in, because I think that just makes it a bit neater. But for the purpose of the demonstration, and it is up to you if you don't like hand stitching, I'm just going to sew this gap up, this little 2-inch gap, just close to the edge, just being mindful that you need to attach both the fabrics if you're sewing to the edge, but also that you're not sewing into the elastic. Okay, so I'm just going to do that now. Just pushing that bit in, there's a bit poking out there. Just for some reason my needle shifted over to the other side. I don't know why it's done that, but that's fine, we can still use it. Can we or can't we? Right, a quick way of doing that, resetting it, switch it off, switch it on again. A bit like your computer, isn't it? Switch it off, switch it on again. Okay, no, I don't know, I obviously knocked that. So what I'm going to do is just pop my needle in right to the edge, but making sure it's gone through all the layers of the fabric. And I'm just sewing along the edge. A few back stitches. Yeah, that's caught it all in. You just ensure, if it's for any reason you've not caught it all in, just go over that little bit again. It's not going to hurt, no one's going to see that, but I have caught all that in. So the next part, the next and final part to do, let's just get you up a bit, is just even all your gathers. Get your bowl and pop it on your bowl. Right. And take it off. Turn it round the other way. What do you think? Quick and easy. I mean, how long's that taken me? Half an hour? And I guess if I wasn't sort of talking as I'm doing through it, it would take me, I don't know, 20 minutes to make one of them start to finish. Nice and easy, and you know, you've got them for as long as you need them really, because all you've got to do is just wash them, pop them in the drawer until you need them next time. Okay, so that's the end of the bowl covers. If you like what you see and you want to see more, think about subscribing. If you subscribe, you can press the alert button so you know when I'm putting other videos on. I don't really go to a schedule. I kind of try and do something every couple of weeks, but because I still work part-time, sometimes it's a bit hard to keep to that, or sometimes I just have an idea in my head and I think, I'm going to do a video on that and just do it like this one. So if you press the alert button, at least you know then when one's coming on. If you do like what you see, give me a thumbs up if you want to. It's encouraging because it kind of tells me that people are liking what I do, and I think I've said in one of the other videos, be nice to build up a little bit of a community, and going along with that theme, if you want to give me any comments, that's fine. If you want to ask me any questions, that's fine. If you've got any tips you want to share, or any of the projects that I've done, if you've had a go and you want to send me a picture, that'd be brilliant. Okay, so enough waffling on. I'll say goodbye for now, and I'll see you again soon. Bye.